Hi, this is Andy Olson from Lightcraft, and we're going through the Luminaire software, and this is the second version of Luminaire software. It's a little bit more advanced. We're going to set up a Celeb 450 from KinoFlo, talk about color and things like that and how to control it on Luminaire. There is a video that comes before this that is the basics on Luminaire, so if you need to check that out, that would be good. But otherwise, let's just jump right into to this tutorial. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a light. So let's go to, I'm using an iPad down here below, but you all can see the screen up here. So let's go to the plus sign, and now we're going to add a DMX fixture, and let's select one. Now what Luminaire does is it has a library. So when you say select profile, you're going to choose a fixture profile from Luminaire's library. You can also go through and create a profile, which is fairly easy. There are a lot of tools in Luminaire to create your own profile and then save it. But for our purposes, let's go into an existing fixture. Let's say select profile. Now pops up different manufacturers. So we'll scroll down to KinoFlo, and we're going to select the Celeb LED, which is the 450 or the 850. It doesn't say that here, but that's the Celeb line. And then in this, now these are the different models of the Celeb 450s, so I know that I want to pick the RGB mode, and that's the way my Celeb is set up. And so now it's asking for which DMX address the light is set to. So I think I have it set to 21. That's my starting address for the Kino Celeb that I have that's sitting next to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set this DMX address by saying +++, and in Luminaire you also have the option to tap on the number and then erase it and then enter in whatever you want on your keyboard. But it doesn't work in Luminaire. It does not accept that address. So for whatever reason, whatever bug they have in this version of it, which is the newest version, you can't use your keyboard to enter the DMX address. You have to use the minus or the plus. So I've plussed up, I've come up to 21, and so now what's happened is Luminaire has populated the screen with these options, and this is the first option is dimming, and then color correction, and then green magenta shift, and then color. Now this is an RGB light. It's actually 6 channels. It's color temperature, it's dimming, it's green magenta shift, and then it's red, green, and blue. So there's 6 channels, but you only see 4 faders here. So Luminaire has taken and sort of combined them, especially this last one that says color, and then said, well, we can combine the RGB channels into one fader, and I'll show you how that works now. So let's just do this just so I can change the lighting here. I'm actually going to turn my light mat down, and I'm going to bring up my KinoFlo. Now what's happened is I've brought up my Kino on the dimming to basically 195 out of 255, completely random. I just slid it up, and there it is. So you'll notice now that my camera is set for 5600 Kelvin because most projectors and TVs are set for fairly high color temperature. But you notice now how orange this light is. So this light will correct for that, but let me just set this light at say 150 in terms of luminance. Now the next one is CCT, and this is going to be color correction. This is our color temperature of the light. And it has a couple of ways. So as you fade it up, you're actually transitioning and transitioning into whatever color this topmost part of this light is set to. And the way you set your high color temperature is by tapping on this button just above the fader that is right now is a little blue box. It's right above the 255. And that sets, once you fade it up, that sets the topmost color temperature of this light in this mode. And you'll notice now over here it says 9900 Kelvin. And so this, according to Luminaire, it thinks it's 9900 degrees Kelvin. Almost certainly it isn't, because you know, Luminaire didn't go to KinoFlo and calibrate the software according to KinoFlo manufacturers. They put in a default color correction and Kelvin degree or Kelvin scale into their lights, and so it's not perfectly correlated. But no worries, you can find that color temperature. You have to use a light meter usually, but still you can now take this fader, and as you are fading down, it's going to now drop into what would be the low end of the color temperature, and you can set that as well, or the high end. So as I'm fading this up and down, we're just changing the color temperature of the light. Super handy, super quick. There's one other thing that's interesting over here on this pop-out menu that pops up. There's a little eye there for information. If you tap on that, you can set your low temperature, which is when the fader's down, or your high temperature, which is when the fader in Luminaire is up. However, having said that, there's very little real correlation between 2700 and what your light is going to put out. I mean, it's going to be fairly close, but for most purposes, it's not truly calibrated. There's no calibration. What you want is you want to make sure your low fader, the low point on your fader, is set to as low as possible, which is 2700, and your high point on your fader is set to 9900. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get everything that the light can do at the low end, which is that warmer look, and then lighter look top end. All right, and then we jump to the next fader, which is green magenta. You'll notice that as I fade out the green and magenta, then it's maybe difficult to read on camera, but this light just turned fairly pink or magenta, so it's adding pink or minusing green. And then as I get to the middle of the fader, it is going to zero out any color correction, any green magenta shift. And then as I fade up and go past that point, it's going to then add quite a bit of green. It's adding a fair amount of green now. It's not a huge color shift, but it's probably what would amount to like half plus or half minus green on a gel. Okay, so let's fade that all the way down. When that fader is in its zero position, there's no green or magenta shift. You're accepting what the manufacturer says, there's no green in that light. Now that might not be true. I found that the KinoFlo Celebs actually, I have to actually add 15 points to them on their menu in order to get rid of the green. There is a default green in the KinoFlo Celeb. Okay, next is the color fader. And remember, the color fader actually takes red, green, and blue and puts them all in one fader. And so the way the color is put into Luminaire is that if you look at above the fader, above the color fader, the fourth fader, it has two buttons. It has a button on the left, it has a button on the right. And these are essentially where you put your colors, or you put your luminance for your colors, or both actually for that matter. So if I tap on the left circle, like you just saw a little flare on that, that now is telling Luminaire in the down position what the value is. So it's faded all the way, you can see on the right, the fader is all the way slid to the left, and so there's no luminance at all built into this channel right now. I can build luminance in if I fade up on the right hand side over here. If I fade that up, now you'll see that little circle above the fader there, the one on the left, has now turned white, and you see our color picker is essentially in the middle of the color circle here. So, and my fader's down. So down fader is actually looking at the white circle. So what I can do now with my fader down is I can pick any color I want. I can jump up here to a green, and now I think you'll see a fair amount of green light hitting me. And my Celeb is sitting off to my left here on the ground and is has faded up. And so now if I fade up the color fader, it's now going toward the right hand circle. And so that circle now is in white, and that's why you see this white light hitting me. And so now if I take my color picker and I jump over here and I say it's red, you'll see now that Luminaire has actually the left fader is green. I kind of messed that up, but so the left fader is green, so as I fade down, it's going toward the left side, which is green, and as I fade that up, it's transitioning over to the red side. Pick that red, pick my red. I can pick any color I want in here. I can jump back to blue. So essentially you're crossfading from the left side or down to the right side or up. Now the only other thing that's kind of crazy about Luminaire is if you don't have a luminance value built into that, Luminaire then, since I'm faded up and therefore to the right, and you see the right circle has no luminance value, it defaults back to whatever my CCT color is. So it's essentially a way of crossfading to a color from white. Or if you jump to another color and you bring this luminance value up, then it's crossfading from color to color. It takes just a little bit of clicking around here to sort of figure this out, but once you get used to it, it's really quite simple. To be honest with you, if you're in color mode, you're crossfading between colors, or you're using some sort of effect, or you're not in any color mode. And so this luminance value would be brought down, and you're in a so-called white mode. And then you're just usually in color correct. You're usually correcting just for color and luminance. Okay, so now if we look at the right screen, the pop-out menu, you'll notice that there are quite a few things here that are actually quite handy. And so let's look at a couple of those. One of them is the color wheel. And the color wheel, once you pick a color, it shows up as a preview on the bottom left right here. And so then what you do is you just hover over that, and then you can drag that into your palette and save that color. So that when you're fishing around for a color, you don't have to say we tap on the left one, we can tap on that and set it up right. So we have saved, Luminaire has saved the colors there in that palette. There's not a lot of them, but at least there are a few of them. You can also set RGB values here. You can use some apps that would tell you RGB values, so you could pick a color already and then know that RGB value and set that RGB value up and enter that in as well, and then save it and then be able to jump to it in Luminaire if you want, if you have a shoot or you need to have a preset color. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching Lightcraft.